I am in Massachusetts at the moment, wearing a parka. I'm freezing, and I'm not in my normal hood in Los Angeles, where I hear it's been in the 80s. So it's a novelty for me. But thank you so much to LACP for putting these talks on every month. And of course, we start with the incredible Julia Dean, who has created a remarkable organization that we all benefit from. And thank you to the wonderful staff and the board and everyone that participates and supports the organization. 3 hours ago, I would be remiss not to acknowledge, I'm going to start to cry, that tonight we are celebrating our humanity, not our inhumanity. Sorry. And we can really move into this evening with a renewed sense of hope for our country. So sorry, I get emotional. Anyway, the Year of Not Knowing is why we're here tonight. And it's a virtual exhibition and the culmination of 15 creative journeys during the most profound and emotional year of our lifetime. The exhibition is a historical marker of this moment in time with insightful individual projects that speak to gratitude, anxiety, memory, place, and simply being human. Each month, we are featuring 3 artists from the exhibition, and tonight I am thrilled to introduce the amazing Sally Ann Field, who made it all happen for us, Alexandra DeFurio, and Shari Yantra Marcacci, who will share their projects created during the pandemic. When the world was blissfully unaware of the devastating global transformation that would impact every corner of our lives, a group of photographers met for a year-long masterclass that I was teaching through LACP. And here each would develop a personal photographic project that would ultimately be exhibited at the Los Angeles Center of Photography in January 2021. And of course, that did not happen as the facility was closed. Fortunately, we had an amazing person in our class who is a graphic designer, web designer, book designer that really came up with an incredible solution to put our exhibition online. And Jason is going to put that website into the chat. We also produced a book of our experiences during the pandemic, and we worked on these artist talks. The amazing thing that has happened by this shifting of not being in person is that our website has had thousands of visitors. If we had simply just done the exhibition, we might have had 200 or 300 people see the work on the walls. But now we've had thousands of people see the work on our website, and we're really excited about the potential of this hybrid model that we're all experiencing in many things in our life. So the best way to describe this journey was the year of not knowing, because we didn't know. I mean, when we would meet in March, we didn't know. When we would meet in June, we didn't know. When we'd meet in September, we didn't know if our show was happening. So the good things that came out of this were that we really came together as a group. And when we worked on the book together, it was this community that was created, and we're really, really proud of the book. It's called The Year of Not Knowing in 6 Words. That's also in the chat that you can order through MagCloud. But tonight is the 4th in our series of artist talks, with one more evening to come next month. And so I am going to start out by celebrating and introducing the amazing Sally Ann Field, who really, really kept our ship afloat. And please check out the website, it's gorgeous. And Sally Ann Field is a visual artist influenced by human behavior and pop culture. Her background in art direction and design plays a definite role in her image making. She grew up in a town with nary a stoplight in bucolic Western New York State. After high school, she exchanged her small town for the big city to study graphic design and began her advertising art direction career in Miami, Florida, later relocating to Los Angeles, California, fortunately for us. Sally's work has been exhibited in a variety of institutions, both nationally and internationally, and her work has been published both online and in print in Don't Take Pictures, Lynn Scratch, F-Stop Magazine, Huffington Post, Her Side of the Street, A Photo Editor, Click Magazine, Los Angeles Times, and Feature Shoot. Her photographs have garnered awards from Leica and National Geographic, and she gives back to various organizations through her photographic efforts. Sally lives in the Hollywood Hills with her American Staffordshire Terrier and her muse, Delilah Bean Field. Welcome, Sally, and thank you for all you have done for this group.
Oh, you are more than welcome. It's been quite a year. Hello, everyone. I'm Sally Ann Field. When I introduce myself, there is usually a pause and a double take. I brace myself for what comes next. Another pause, followed by something like this. In response, I mastered this look at a very young age. Actually, it wasn't until kindergarten I was made aware of my famous name. The first day of school, Mrs. Fritton made a big deal about my name. This was met with blank stares from a sea of 5-year-old faces. As an adult, I needed to find out who was responsible. My older relatives tell me it was my big brothers who were 14 and 15 when I was born. My brothers vehemently deny this. They say they didn't even know who Sally Field was back then. I'm not buying it. Since I have lived my whole life with a famous name, I often wonder how it would feel to be the famous person. Through a series of self-portraits, I channel my inner celebrity and recreate the iconic moments in the life of the actress Sally Field, but as me being Sally Field. Her talent seems limitless. There's no shortage of iconic roles and moments to pull from. I decided to begin with The Flying Nun. Believe it or not, I had never seen this show. After watching several episodes, I was impressed. Incredibly campy, but so much fun. Wardrobe proved impossible to find, so I asked my neighbors on the Nextdoor app for recommendations, and with their help, I found a seamstress to recreate the costume. Turns out she has done many studio fittings for the actress Sally Field, who she said is a very lovely person. Only in Hollywood. And here we go. I have grand plans for this project and have just dipped my toe in the waters of self-portraiture. I find it incredibly difficult to be in front of the camera, but have promised myself to keep going. Only I can tell this story, so stay tuned. My 35-year career as an advertising art director and graphic designer has most definitely shaped my influences. Bill Bernbach, an advertising creative director during the Mad Men era, says, "An idea can turn to dust or magic depending on the talent that rubs against it." This legendary VW campaign drove me, pardon the pun, to buy my first car while in art school in 1984. I lived in South Florida at the time. This car had no air conditioning. My 18-year-old brain did not consider this a problem. The power of advertising at work. Once I entered the workforce, I traded my VW Bug for a new car with all the comforts. One of my few regrets. I'm hoping one day to own and drive this car again. I spent many years as an art director in the crazy world of advertising. I know a brilliant ad when I see one, and this one remains epic. Vivian Meyer, a street photographer whose work was discovered and recognized after her death. She worked for about 40 years as a nanny, mostly in Chicago's North Shore, while pursuing photography. And she says, "I'm sort of a spy." Oh, Vivian, so many unanswered questions you left behind. The one thing you answered in your images was your undeniable eye. The way you see and framed your world made it look so easy. As a street photographer, I know myself just how difficult this is. There are many opinions on what makes a great street photograph. Some say that direct eye contact is not good. I beg to differ. I'm especially drawn to the graphic lines Vivian captured that also tell a story. Andy Warhol, an artist, film director, and producer who was a leading figure in the visual art movement known as pop art. He says, "Being good in business is the most fascinating kind of art. Making money is art, and working is art, and good business is the best art." Andy Warhol worked as a young professional in advertising as a commercial illustrator. Those early years and interests profoundly influenced his fine art work, and that fine art work has in turn influenced the commercial world we all live in today. I make my living as a commercial artist. The way that Andy Warhol was able to blur these lines, I find incredibly inspiring. His use of color, composition, print medium, and pop culture made a lasting impression on the world of design, advertising, and our overall visual language. And now I will revisit some of my past work. As an art director, I have been involved with photography for years, but not as the photographer. I fell in love with photography in high school and spent all of my free time in the darkroom. In 2012, I decided I wanted to start shooting again. I bought a used Canon 5D from Craigslist. I took an online class and learned how to really use it. I discovered LACP shortly thereafter and signed up for a street photography class with who else but the master of street herself, Julia Dean. I was hooked from the start. After years of planned to death commercial shoots, the idea of capturing unscripted, spontaneous moments on the streets became my drug. As a street photographer, I am drawn to people and the places they inhabit. The streets become stages where small dramas are played out in a split second. My fascination with how humans interact with space allows me to imagine I am a director, seeking to capture cinematic and emotional moments. I am a watcher and reactor. I first look for light and then wait for life to play out. The results are small novellas, short stories that are a moment in time without a beginning or ending. I think and see graphically, seeking visual structure to my images. I tend to simplify the frame and leave the opportunity for emotion and magic to fill in the spaces. Punch bug. As a child, the Volkswagen Beetle represented more than an unusually shaped car. It was the genesis of a car game where my backseat companions and I would punch each other on the arm upon first sight of a Volkswagen Beetle while shouting out, "Punch bug," in reference to the Beetle's nickname, the Bug. My fascination with this car continued throughout my teens. In 1984, a gently loved white 74 Bug became my first set of wheels. It's been many decades since I've owned a Beetle. Yet every single time I see a classic Bug on the road, my heart skips a beat. With my series Punch Bug, I pay tribute to these round relics with environmental portraits. Just like when I was a child, this photographic project has become a fun game and is all about the thrill of the hunt. These days, when I shout out Punch Bug, I have no time to punch. I'm too busy reaching for my camera. Duos de Oaxaca. The vibrantly enchanting Oaxaca, Mexico was a visual feast. As I wandered the streets, I was inspired by the light, color, shapes, and stories playing out before me. As I photographed, I intentionally created vertical compositions, pairing the visuals in my mind and later by hand. The result is a travel diary where I add my visual voice to the narrative of each scene, allowing the images to carry on a conversation of their own. And now for my new project, 911, What's Your Emergency? Up until the late 1960s, there was no centralized number for people to call in case of an emergency. If someone needed to contact the police or fire department, they called the nearest station. Another option was to dial 0 to reach the telephone operator and then be connected. By 1968, AT&T, which at the time operated nearly all telephone connections in the US, established a 911 line. Why that number? They wanted a number that was short, easy to remember, and unique, and 911 had never been used as an area code or service code before. This was also back when rotary dial telephones are still the primary type of phone, so the shorter the number, the better. I grew up in rural America in the 1970s. The winters were long in Western New York State, so once summertime hit, we were outside playing from dawn to dusk. My neighbor Tom and I rode bikes to Merrill's, the general store in town, to pick up milk or bread or something our moms needed to make dinner. We were paid in popsicles or penny candy. Our local newspaper, the Tri-County Times, was published weekly and arrived at the store on Thursday mornings. The Off the Police blotter column was always a highlight. Here for 20 cents, the community learned of bad check writers, shoplifters, and harassers. However, most reports were a bit tamer, such as cows escaping their confines, a motorist losing a hubcap after hitting a dangerous pothole, or even a piano falling out of a pickup and shattering all over Main Street. The police scanner was another popular way of staying informed at that time. It's now 2021 and I live in Los Angeles. The physical newspaper has been replaced by a digital version, which I read on my iPhone, iPad, or iMac. I even get alerts on my iWatch. In 2019, I installed Citizen on my iPhone. Citizen is an app that alerts you when crimes, emergencies, and other potentially dangerous events happen in your area. There's an app for everything these days, including police scanners, and at its core, that's essentially what Citizen is too. All notifications are taken from real 911 calls, although only a fraction of all calls in your area actually make it onto the app. Shocked to see how much was going on within a few miles of my Hollywood home, I began taking screenshots of the more humorous and brow-raising events. When the pandemic hit, the number of reports escalated, and I found myself with a pretty crazy collection of happenings taped to my wall. Tired of being housebound, I ventured out safely, armed with my mask and my camera, to visit the scene of the crimes. The result is a less than glamorous, yet often hilarious, collection of 100% real happenings in Los Angeles. Reading the iPhone screen is an important part of this work. For this presentation, I will show each piece full frame and then zoom in closer so you can easily read all of the details of the report. And lastly, the Pandemic Pantry. I'd like to share some recent work of mine inspired by Andy Warhol's Campbell's soup cans and created during our COVID times. When COVID-19 hit our lives in March 2020, we took stock of our pantries. Some hoarded, some planned for the best, but all of us were unnerved by the uncertainty of the days, weeks, and months ahead. From toilet paper to canned goods, the shelves were shopped bare. With my project, The Pandemic Pantry, I add a bit of COVID humor to an iconic American canned staple. I raise my glass to all of my fellow artists who made it through the year of not knowing and managed to make some pretty incredible work. I'd like to give a tremendous thank you to our fearless leader, mentor, and friend, Aline Smithson. We all followed her lead with some stunning results. Please check out our website, theyearofnotknowing.com, where you can see all of our projects, read our artist statements, and even order our book. A special thank you to LACP, the Los Angeles Center of Photography. Not only do they provide top-notch education, they are also the glue to our photographic community here in LA. I have made so many friends through LACP. One of the good things to come from COVID is the online programming they now offer, bringing our creative worlds a little closer together. To see more of my work, please visit my website, sallyannfield.com, or check out my Instagram @sallyannfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. So great to have some levity during this time. And you actually introduced me to the Citizen app, so I get to see all the happenings in my neighborhood. I'm constantly
A
shocked.
blessing and a curse.
Yes. All right, now we move on to the amazing Alexandra DeFurio. I'm so happy to introduce Alexandra. She's a Los Angeles-based commercial and fine art photographer. Her personal work is inspired by the themes relating to home, architecture, and the feminine. Her work includes use of self-portraiture, double exposures, and documentary stories. Her work has been exhibited at Pop Art Photo Show, the Hive Gallery, Startup Art Fair, and the Los Angeles Center of Photography, and her photos have been published in Lens Scratch, A Photo Editor, What Will You Remember? Alexandra is also a writer and a mother of 2 daughters, and I have to say, of all the people during the pandemic, she was on fire. She worked so hard. She had so many projects going on. She was not someone who was waylaid by the pandemic or isolation. She was out making work constantly. I'm so proud of her and so happy to introduce her this evening. Welcome, Alexandra.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aline. I mean, so much from your encouragement too. So, okay, let me get started here. Also, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's here today, taking time out of your day to be here. And I see faces I know and new faces, and we're all connected. We all made it through the year of 2020 and the year of not knowing. I came into this world with an eye for seeing beauty and light. It has carried me forward in the darkest of moments. If you can find beauty, you can find hope. This less than idyllic family photo was taken in 1975, several months after my father had left. His abrupt departure and new family would be a source of pain throughout my childhood, and the narratives of home would surface time and again in my personal work as a photographer. My mother's strength informed me of the perseverance of the feminine. Her fragilities gave me permission to express my own vulnerabilities. Several times she would demonstrate how to rebuild a life. She was a 1970s feminist, perpetually curious and always driving us to a new adventure. We would often find ourselves in unique situations led by my mother's pioneer spirit. One day she picked up a mother and a daughter who were hitchhiking, and they became fast friends. After exchanging a few letters, we were invited to where they would be homesteading, 10 miles out in the wilderness at the base of Mount Denali. We drove the Alaska Highway, then completely unpaved. You can see the layer of mud on our VW bus. We listened to Call of the Wild and Edgar Allan Poe while we drove in the dark of the untamed wilderness. Sometimes we would go for days without seeing another vehicle. These summers of 1978 and 1979 would weave the pioneer spirit into the fabric of my being, which I would later call upon in work. Together through it all, my little brother Tony and my sister Rebecca. Along the way, we would stop off at abandoned mining towns in the middle of nowhere. They had not yet become tourist attractions. This was my favorite part of the road trip. Evidence of lives deserted resonated with me as I searched for understanding of my own losses. I was enthralled with these structures that were once inhabited and left behind clues as to what once was and no longer existed. The discussions in our home revolved around science. No one discussed art. and becoming an artist would have never occurred to me as an option. However, this structure would become my first influence, the Johnson Wax headquarters, built by legendary architect Frank Lloyd Wright in 1936, where my grandfather worked as a chemist for most of his life. Wright's most inspirational force was nature, and he designed the space where the secretaries worked to be indicative of a forest with skylights, allowing the organic light to play a part in the scene. His attention to symmetry and simplicity, his consciousness of structure, being in harmony with nature, would become the same way I would frame the world through the lens of a camera. Frank Lloyd Wright once said, "The longer I live, the more beautiful life becomes. If you foolishly ignore beauty, you will find yourself without it. Your life will be impoverished. But if you invest in beauty, it will remain with you all the days of your life." Walking through this glass tunnel at Johnson's Wax was an early lesson in light and lines, and nothing less than magical. This was Wingspread, built in 1937, a home designed by Frank Lloyd Wright for the Johnson Wax family. I am never underwhelmed by the way he pushed boundaries in creative space, merging architecture with the natural world. In our home, we had many images of women embodying the feminine form with beauty and sensuality. Among them, prints by Alphonse Mucha, who was a Czech painter, illustrator, and graphic artist living in Paris during the Art Nouveau period. There are also several lithographs by painter Maxfield Parrish. Having a childhood without technology and screens gave me hours on end to dream and study the neoclassical style that would inform me about staging and gesture in the years ahead when I would begin to make my own work. In 1922, Maxfield Parrish painted Daybreak, and it became the most popular art print of the 20th century. 1 in 4 US households owned a print of this landscape. My mother had this hanging in her bedroom. Parrish was noted for his dynamic composition, the arrangements of lights and darks, and his placement of structure and figure. A quote from George O'Keeffe, the mother of American modernism. "I thought someone could tell me how to paint a landscape, but I never found that person. I just had to settle down and try. They could tell you how they painted their landscape, but they couldn't tell me how to paint mine." O'Keeffe's rich practice as an artist, her unwavering conviction and authentic self-expression, not only through her paintings, but through her wardrobe, her way of incorporating nature into a modern minimalist space, inspires me daily in the way I live and work. She painted sensual flowers in large abstract form, in brilliant color, and managed to reject sexist stereotypes. This image was taken by her husband, photographer Alfred Stieglitz. Georgia is one of the women who has given me permission to push my own boundaries and decide for myself who I am and what my work means. After high school, I moved to Los Angeles and started acting. I did many commercials and enjoyed being in front of the camera, though deep down I knew it wasn't my calling. Here, a still from a short film I was in. Becoming a mother placed me behind the camera. Its weight in my hands and the way the world disappeared when I looked through the viewfinder felt like a homecoming. On simple days at the park with my daughters, I began to teach myself how to take pictures. I love the gentleness of gesture and play of light shapes in this image of my daughter Sophia that I took in 2003. I'm an autodidact and I have learned by doing. I became a portrait and commercial photographer by consistently taking work that pushed my boundaries and challenged my skill set by saying yes before I was ready. My personal aesthetic evolved by creating test shoots that allowed me the freedom to explore. Throughout my work, femininity has been interwoven and my early influences are evident. Wanting to learn new ways to work, I took a workshop and was assigned a self-portrait, which placed me both behind and once again in front of the camera. I was resistant, to say the least, and fought my way through the process. The end result was a new beginning for me. Diaphanous. These diaphanous images reveal the delicate and ethereal layering of our memories and how we construct them through our personal narrative. Each image consists of 2 photos that I took from 2 different places and layered them one upon the other. And this brings us to January. A broken heart is not the same as sadness. Sadness occurs when the heart is stone cold and lifeless. On the contrary, there is an unbelievable amount of vitality in a broken heart. Elizabeth Lesser, Broken Open, How Difficult Times Can Help Us Grow. During times of grief, an unedited version of self emerges. A loss of identity and belonging brings both devastation and freedom. In January 2019, I awoke each morning and constructed an image on the same wall in my bedroom, utilizing the soft light from the window and one belonging used as a prop. My camera was on a tripod and set to a 10-second timer. Each day was a visual diary inspired from my dreams the night before or by morning pages. I forced myself to make work during a time when I felt completely hollowed out by the ending of a relationship. Creativity is the most dependable source of healing I have found. The Safer at Home Project. Words alone cannot tell the story of 2020. I felt a responsibility to use my camera during this time to document something I couldn't even begin to comprehend. The day shelter-in-place orders were issued, I stepped outside to a ghost town of a city, simultaneously poetic and frightening. I visited 70 homes and recorded 70 interviews, each with a unique story, all experiencing the same fears and disbelief. The project took on a life of its own. Flowing like a river, I surrendered to its current. I met people who had been alone for months and cried when they saw me. Families gathered in the window to greet me, relieved to have a distraction from each other. It was an intensely vulnerable time and an experience that makes me feel honored that I was able to bear witness to it in my own small way. Ryan, I've already had a few existential crises here and there. A little anxiety, I think, is normal. For the most part, I'm pretty chill. I do miss seeing my friends though. Vanessa, if you look at the media, it looks like everyone else has time to do projects, be super creative and funny, take advantage of online resources and save the world. It's hard not to feel down about yourself. Henry, in the last couple of weeks, I can hear the birds singing a lot more. Now I wake up to the birds and I don't remember doing that before. Monica, when Vaughn proposed to me, he said, "Not only am I marrying you, but I'm marrying your son." He gave Caleb a ring that he wears on his right hand. Quarantine has accelerated things, but it's been an easy transition for the most part. Patrick, I'm a single dad and I'm homeschooling right now, so it's rough. I'm trying to stay in a routine so my life doesn't get scattered. Rebecca, the earth has put everyone on timeout and the environment is reacting so quickly. That's one of the blessings in disguise. Silver, it's the worst I've ever seen America or the world, and that includes the Second World War and the other wars. Michael, I chose the life of a touring musician, and when your sole income is based on attendance, postponements or cancellations can put you in a very precarious position. Bridie, this forced pause has pushed me into a place where I find myself reconsidering how I really want to work and live, how I can switch up my life to be more connected and live in a less frenetic, stressed way. Danya, there's been so much sweetness in our lives with this new baby, yet there's also a deep sadness that her grandparents and friends can't hold her or know her during this precious and fleeting time of her life. Ahmad, the other morning I was walking on a path where there was room for enough people to pass 6 feet apart, but this woman went and hid behind a bush until I passed. It was very strange, and I was thinking, is this what it's coming to? Then I thought, it's okay. I don't know what she's going through. Maybe she's protecting me. I'm learning a lot about myself. Julie, my reserves are empty because we're with young children all of the time. It's definitely bringing out parts of myself that I'm not thrilled with, and I'm finding parts of myself that I am impressed with. Those times I can dig down and find the emotional strength. This is work that I had begun before the pandemic, and I continued and really completed the project in the middle of the pandemic. Fault lines. Living in Los Angeles means you could have a fault line running through your backyard. In any unforeseen moment, an earthquake could hit. Your home could fall to complete destruction around you. The fault lines in our lives are much the same, building pressure over time until one day there was a shift. And within a few moments, perhaps through a phone call, a few words uttered, we are given a diagnosis. A relationship breaks or someone we love dies, and the life we knew before is lost in the fallout. After losing my mother to the darkness of Alzheimer's disease and enduring the loss of a long-term relationship, my sense of home and belonging was shaken. Feeling like a walking ghost, I took notice of and resonated with the abandoned houses in my new neighborhood. Spaces in transition, overtaken by the wild, existing among the ordinary. I processed my grief by exploring these places in solitude. I would disappear for hours with my camera into the stillness, and there I found healing within my own interiors. These houses informed me of the beauty amongst the ashes, conveyed that life always pushes us forward, that new growth is inevitable. And there is a message in what was lost. All night I dreamt of bonfires and burn piles and ghosts of men and spirits behind those birds of flame. I cannot tell anymore when a door opens or closes. I can only hear the frame saying, walk through. The words are by Ada Limon, my favorite poet.
Thank you, Alexandra. Just delicious work.
Thank you. And I'd just like to give a big warm thank you to each of you for being here today. And thank you to Aline for being our fearless leader during the year of 2020, encouraging us to keep on with our projects. Aline, you are an endless source of inspiration and support for all artists. And I am personally very grateful to you, as I am to each photographer in this group. And I'd also like to acknowledge my daughter and talented filmmaker, Sophia Krenna, for making the Fault Line video. Both of my daughters have been incredibly patient growing up with a mother who often had a camera in her hands. And lastly, to my community of LACP friends who relentlessly believe in me and inspire me. Thank you.
I hope, Sally and Alexandra, you spend some time on the chat. You're getting lots of love. I also want to ask the audience if anyone has any questions to please put them in the chat before you forget them, so that we can ask the artists later on. Our next wonderful photographer is sound asleep right now. She had, during the pandemic, she moved her family to where her parents are, and that's in Switzerland. And Shari Yantra Marcacci it's probably about 2 or 3 a.m. for her right now. So she's blissfully sleeping through this presentation. She will watch it tomorrow, but she sent us a video, and I will read her bio and introduce her, and then Jason will share her work. Born in Switzerland, Shari Yantra Marcacci is a visual artist now based in Los Angeles and Zurich. Her work explores themes of loss, trauma, intimacy, and self-discovery with a focus on personal storytelling centered around self and family. Her background in dance and filmmaking informs her directorial and documentary skills, giving her a sensitivity and insight into into universal human traits, their characters and psychology. Her work has been exhibited in group and juried exhibitions at institutions such as the Center of Fine Art Photography in Colorado, the Los Angeles Center of Photography, the Darkroom Gallery and the Photoplace Gallery in Vermont, the Houston Center of Photography, Think Tank Gallery Los Angeles, the Black Box Gallery Portland, Oregon, ICP in New York, and the Netanya Artists Association in Israel and in Switzerland. Her work has been featured in publications such as F-Stop, Lens Scratch, and Float magazine. So Shari, when you see this tomorrow, we all welcome you. And Jason, please share her video.
Hi everyone, it's such a pleasure to be with you tonight. First of all, I would like to thank my mentor and friend Aline Smithson for always inspiring me and guiding me to find my own voice. And a big thank you to all of you at the Year of Not Knowing, my fellow photographers and friends. You have inspired me so much and pushed me to not give up when sometimes all I wanted was to crawl into bed and close my eyes. 2020 will never be forgotten, for good and bad reasons, but mostly because of all of you. I would also like to thank the Los Angeles Center for Photography, where 7 years ago I found a community that has impacted my life in so many ways. Before I dive into my photography, I would like to tell you a little more about myself and my background, because I think it's a big influence on my art and who I am today. I was born in Locarno, in the Italian part of Switzerland. Italy is only 20 minutes away, so we have a lot of influences from there, and of course, we speak Italian. A lot of artists and writers moved to Ticino, There is something magical and inspiring that has drawn lots of artists to settle there. I've always done something in the arts from an early age on. I started figure skating when I was 5 years old. My idol was Katharina Witt. When I was 6 years old, I started doing ballet. This became a big passion in my life. Here I am, performing Daphne and Chloe at the Hamburg State Opera. I left home at the age of 15 and a half to pursue a professional dance education in Germany and then in Canada. I've always loved modern dance. The choreographer and dancer Martha Graham and Pina Bausch have always inspired me. When I was 14 years old, I went to New York to attend several dance classes for the summer. I was in shock when Baryshnikov attended the same ballet class I took with my dance mentor. It was one of my highlights. I might have inherited the passion for dance from my grandmother. She was a professional modern and cabaret dancer. When she was 16 years old, she left home. Her parents kicked her out because back then, being a dancer was seen as like being a prostitute. On a tour in the Italian part of Switzerland, she met my grandfather. In order for them to have a life together, she was asked to give up her dance career because being a dancer was not considered a serious profession. She gave up dance and was unhappy and bitter for the rest of her life. I lived in many places. I left home when I was 15 and a half to go to the Hamburg Ballet School in Germany. After that, dance, school, and love brought me to many places. I lived in Hamburg, Toronto, Bologna, Italy, Berlin, and then LA. In between, I spent a few years in Zurich. I moved to Los Angeles in 2003. Due to severe back problems, I had to give up dance. My world and I fell apart. All I ever wanted and worked for since the age of 6 was lost. It took me many years to get over it, and to this day, when I go see a dance performance, I have to cry. This image is part of a series I did with the Brazilian actress Paula Dujali, in which I was exploring having to give up a dream. In 2001, my dad gave me a Super 8mm camera for my birthday, and I discovered another passion where I finally could be creative again. In 2003, I moved to Los Angeles and went to film school. I worked in film in different capacities, directing, writing, and producing. One of my first films I made is very dear to me. Already back then, I was trying to deal with the emotional pain through art. In Night Shift, the main characters both had to give up a dream. Another project, which was a highlight of my career, was co-writing for an African election, a documentary about the presidential elections in Ghana, West Africa in 2008. Filmmakers that inspire me are Kieslowski, Wim Wenders, David Lynch, Fellini, Truffaut, Cassavetes, Jane Campion, and Scorsese. 7 years ago, I bought my first professional camera and took the first workshops at LACP. It was love at first sight. I was immediately drawn to self-portraiture. Here is a self-portrait in which I'm exploring the theme of having to give up a dream. And here are a few of my self-portraits. I like to focus on portraiture. I really like being able to use my background as a director to direct my subjects and also use other subjects to express my own emotions. These are 3 images of my series called In Between, where I explore intimacy and human emotions. And here are a few more of my portraits. Photographers that inspire me are Sally Mann, Irving Penn, Henri Cartier-Bresson, Salgado, Francesca Woodman, and Mario Cravonetto. I've always focused on deeply personal projects, not afraid to open my heart and let my viewers in. The Journey is a series about our personal struggle with infertility. Once again, art helped me to survive a challenging time in my life that lasted 3 years. Once I finally became a mother, it felt only natural to do a series about motherhood and how very different it was than I had imagined. Here is my series Motherhood Reconsidered and a few images. March 2020 came and our life got turned upside down. I had just started a personal project with Aline and I was thinking about a new project. At the same time, I had started photographing our son Liam every day just to get through the days and, survive the changes, the challenges of being a mom, of being a wife, and of trying to, keep everything together without falling apart. It was only natural for me once again to do a project about our life and personal struggle. Here is my series in Limbo. This is a portrait that Aline took of me when I was 9 months pregnant, and it is very dear to me. I would like to take a moment to honor our incredible friend Paula Reef. She was loved by so many of us and has left an immense sense of loss. Here a portrait took of Paula with her cat in 2015. Rest in peace, our sunshine. Thank you all.
Thank you, Shari. And I would just like to say, if I ever have to give a presentation, I want you to narrate it. You have such a beautiful lyrical voice, and your pronunciation of all things non-English is just spectacular. Um, Three wonderful, wonderful artists tonight. I'm so honored to know them and to follow them and to see them explode with their creativity. And before we get to Sally and Alexandra and ask them a few questions, I too wanted to share something briefly about our dear friend, Paula Riff. We wanted to take a few minutes before we lead into the questions to acknowledge Paula Riff's passing. Many of the members of the Year of Not Knowing have been in classes with Paula or had come to know her through the Los Angeles photo community. In early February, we lost a bright light and an incredible artist, the one and only Paula Riff. She leaves her daughter and an army of friends and admirers to absorb the profound loss to our community. And I'm going to share a bit of a lens scratch post I recently wrote on her passing. Hang on. In 2014, a diminutive, bespectacled, smiling face Paula Riff joined a class that I was teaching. She sat right up front and would smile and nod her head all through my lectures. As an educator, it was wonderful validation that what I was teaching was making sense and was meaningful to her. At that time, Paula had not started her amazing journey through alternative processes. The work she brought to share had been made decades earlier, small silver gelatin prints captured during a trip to Russia and hand painted. Over the next 2 years, she began to tiptoe into new ways of making work without a camera and found her voice through layered, handmade, marbleized papers, gum bichromate, cyanotype, and more, and the rest is history. Paula took her work seriously, studying and reading, trying and failing, and most often trying and succeeding in building her own unique language in the photographic arts. Much of her work is rooted in her love of all things Japanese and mid-century sensibilities. Her color palette was perfection, and the simplicity of her work filled with color and gesture made it even more remarkable. She writes about the beginnings of her aesthetics. As I consider my influences and artistic journey, it starts in college when I fell in love with all things Japanese. I studied the language and the culture, and right after graduation, I moved to Tokyo, remaining for almost a decade. I worked as an interpreter and loved being bilingual. And though I hadn't considered an artistic practice at that time, I was profoundly inspired by the minimal and considered aesthetic of Japan. Once Paula was introduced to the photography community, she jumped in with vigor and both feet, befriending and supporting everyone she met and admired. She showed up to every opening, loved to travel, to attend Shoot-a-Palooza events or fly to Paris for Paris Photo, always with enthusiasm and in high spirits, bringing a sense of adventure and fun and champagne along for the ride. She had a particular way of being fully present and engaged, and as the outpouring of love after her passing showed, she also knew how to make everyone feel special. Paula had just put the finishing touches on her spectacular monograph, Paula Riff Works on Paper, when she passed. It's designed by Susan Swihart. It's a stunning color-filled collection of 3 of her projects. The book is being printed in Belgium with 136 pages. And right now we're doing a pre-sale of the book to help offset printing costs through her website. I think Jason has a link in the chat. Though the book won't be here to be shipped for a few months, it's already beginning to sell out. We only printed 350 copies and we've sold 300. So if you are interested in purchasing a book, now's the time to do it. The creation and distribution of this book is being done by her friends in the photo community as a labor of love. This is really remarkable. And she's also continuing to exhibit thanks to her daughter and friends in the photo community that are taking care that her legacy continues. I'm also delighted to announce the Paula Riff Award created by Lens Scratch and the Center of Photographic Arts as a way to celebrate and continue her legacy. Paula was an innovator using cameraless photography and historical processes, and the award will be open to artists whose art is challenging conventional photography through work that reflects the artist's hand, either based on historical and alternative processes or with physical intervention through cutting, sewing, etc. For this year's award, the deadline is June 8th, and the winner will receive $1,000 and have their work featured on Lens Scratch and on the Center of Photographic Arts website. And the winner will be announced in July, Paula's birth month. The artist, Brenton Hamilton, is the 2021 juror. So if you'd like to donate to the award or submit to the award, the link is in the chat, or you can find it on the Center of Photographic Arts website. Again, this was a community effort to keep her name going through this award for a number of years into the future. We will miss you, beautiful friend, and we'll see you again in another time and place. So I would like to open up for questions. We have about 15 minutes or so. I'm going to start off with one for Sally and ask Sally, what product would you like to create an ad campaign for?
Ooh. That's a toughie. Maybe slime. Remember slime? When I don't know if they even still make it. I don't know. I did just see a brilliant ad campaign for Fisher Price, done by Wieden Kennedy. If you guys look it up, but basically they looked at everyday objects as toys through the eyes of the child. I don't know. There's just too many options. I can't really narrow it down.
Okay, Alexandra, how did you find your subjects for Safer at Home? And then how did you conduct the interviews with them? Were they written or were they taped?
So my first portrait was of my next door neighbor, who often muses for me. And I know she's always will give me a yes. So I said, whatever you're wearing, whatever you're doing, just can you come to the window right now as you are? And so I took her portrait and I looked at my camera and I was blown away. So I just called a few friends. Not everybody was open. I mean, at that time, people were even afraid to have me in the yard. So I started with a few friends and then they would call their friends. I was in one block, I was in Venice on the Venice walk streets, and somebody called 10 people. And so 10 of her friends. And so she just gave me a list of addresses. And so it was like very like writing things down, you know, here you go. Well, actually it was texting because yeah, we weren't having any contact. But so a lot of the people I had never met, and they would talk to me. At first, I started doing the interviews just on my phone. And so they would come outside and I'd stand like 12 feet away. And there was a lot of background noise and it just didn't feel comfortable or right. So then I started using an app, like a recording app. And that really brought out a lot of intimacy because the phone, and sometimes I would talk to people at night, and a lot of people ended up crying on the phone with me, really sharing like deep thoughts and feelings. So that was really amazing. So I have it all audio recorded as well.
That's great.
And I'd like to say one other thing about that, which is interesting, is I learned a lot about myself because I had to play back the recordings to transcribe them. I really learned to stop talking because I would hear myself interview and asking questions, and most of the time only silence is required. So I really learned a lot about myself and my listening skills.
That's very insightful of you. All right, Sally, I was describing your 911 project to my son earlier this evening, and he said, did she ever see an alarm and run to the location? Which I think there is a Jake Gyllenhaal movie where he plays a reporter or paparazzi that goes out to crimes. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but did you ever have the desire to get in the car and run to the scene of the crime?
You know, I haven't. I don't know if I'm really that brave, especially since some of the most harrowing ones and interesting ones happen after dark. And my neighborhood has really changed in the last year. So, but I have read a lot of articles where it's almost sport. You know, people want to be the first one to shoot the video, you know, and because you can actually add lifetime video to the report. And so it's become like a competition who can get to the scene first. And I think that ship has sailed for me. I'd rather visit after.
Mark Carson thankfully put in the chat that the movie was called Nightcrawler. So if you haven't seen it, it's worth a watch.
I will totally watch that. I have not seen it.
Yeah. Alexandra, what inspired you to also use video with your still images?
Oh, well, my daughter is a filmmaker. She usually shoots with Super 8. But yeah, actually I had, sorry, Sophia, I had to ask her a lot of times, like, please come with me to this house because I don't know, I just think maybe I'm gonna regret not having video if we don't do something. So she just came with me there one day, and I think it really added to the whole presentation. And also that house was torn down. One day I went to do another self-portrait, and I walked up and it was completely gone. I don't know if you remember one of the photos where I'm wearing the red dress. And I literally fell to the ground and started crying. I felt like I had lost a friend. I had become so close to this structure. And also it was also a moment, a pivotal moment of it's time to move on. It's done.
What I love about these artist talks are that you all did such a beautiful job connecting the dots. And Alexandra, when you showed us your growing up and your trip to Alaska with your mother and your siblings and going to abandoned houses and how that has carried on as a theme in your work and looking at space and structure and providing your beautiful self-portraits within those spaces. And Sally, your childhood fascination with advertising and with VWs and with a sense of humor and whimsy, and it carries all through your work too. And the same with Shari, with her beautiful images of dance and gesture that she brings into her own photographic practice. So bravo to all of you, and thank you all so much for coming tonight. It's indeed a night to celebrate lots of things. So I hope you all stay safe and well and are get double vaxxed, and I'll hopefully see you on an airplane this summer. And anyway, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you to our artists. Thank you to LACP, and stay safe.